When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again. To bring down the prices of all goods. Starting the day I take the oath of office, I will rapidly drive prices down and we will make America affordable again. We're going to make it affordable again. And we're going to get the prices down. We have to get them down. It's too much. Groceries, cars, everything. We're going to get the prices down. A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper. So many people mention, I go in, so many people mention groceries, that beautiful but simple word, groceries. Sir, my groceries.
Eventually,
Stocks going out at the lows. The Dow falling more than 1,600 points, almost 1,700 points. The S&P and NASDAQ just finished their worst sessions since 2020.
President Trump called yesterday's tariff announcement Liberation Day. Today's market reaction looks more like Liquidation Day.
Big market sell-off this hour. It is ugly out there.
Front and center this hour, Trump's tariff sell-off. Stocks, as you know by now, of course, deeply red after a much worse than expected outcome yesterday.
So I think we got basically the worst of what you could have thought you were doing.
Almost all the major markets are selling off right now on new tariffs and new fears of an American and maybe global recession.
He's in shock. At these levels are completely beyond imagination. There is no way that the cost of these tariffs will not be passed along almost immediately.
It is Thursday, April 3rd, a day that is now etched in the history of failed economic policy.
Numbers that were on that grid. They don't mean anything. They came up with it because they were in a hurry to cobble something together.
I started calling international trade economic experts, and nobody ever heard of this formula. Nobody has ever used this formula. So I'm sorry, but the conclusion seems to be the president kind of made this up as he went along.
And I will say the traders who are passing this on to me are also saying, what a very well-known one, it's absurd and shows a kindergarten-level understanding of international trade.
Right.
Breaking news, Vice President J.D. Vance just saying the Trump administration is, quote, feeling good about Trump's tariffs.
We're feeling good. Look, I frankly thought in some ways it could be worse in the markets because this is a big transition. You saw the president said earlier today, it's like a patient who was very sick. We did the operation, and now it's time to make the patient better. And that's exactly what we're doing.
did over and over again. The president said, listen, it's going to be reciprocal. So you do it, we do it. And that was going to be so good. And I really believed in it. And I feel like a sucker tonight because I am not a free trader and I do not believe in free trade. And I was just as tough, if not tougher than his people, but they screwed it up and they really they did it a totally ill-advised way. And I was very let down as someone who really, truly believes that free trade is awful for the American working person. This is what they came up with. Geez, come on, have some gumption, have some math.
I mean, how in the world do they do that after all of this?
They assured us over and over again, Aaron, that they were going to do the thing that would make it so that the tariffs would come down and the countries would that were bad actors would change their ways. And then Israel decides to get rid of tariff.
And they tariffed them anyway.
Vietnam decides to cut their tariff, and they still got the highest tariff. It was such a shame because they missed the opportunity, and now they have to pay the price. And it's funny, too, because none of this stock market, none of this had to happen. And I feel bad because a lot of people lose money when this happens. I hope people just be calm and be constructive. But the way that they handled it was so Bush League that I was surprised. And President Trump has people who around him know these things. And
meanwhile,
markets look set to sell off as Donald Trump imposes the steepest U.S. import levies in a century.
I don't think there's a single positive take on this. This is all just bad.
Stocks set to wipe out nearly $2 trillion in market value.
Taking a plunge as investors react to the sweeping tariffs. The world was yesterday sort of bracing for a bazooka. But Trump decided he was going to go the Chicago way, and he dropped an economic Moab.
And they are going to turn it upside down, and I think 50-50 into a recession.
Is a collection of companies and people reacting to events. And it began to quickly absorb how bad the pandemic was going to be. And that was the last time we saw this large a drop. Stocks suffer biggest one-day wipeout in value since that March 2020 pandemic is the Wall Street Journal's headline today, a kind of a Bible for Wall Street. You can see the steep plunge in the combined drop there among the 500 largest companies. Those are the biggest companies that trade publicly. And you can see the reaction quite clear to the Trump tariff announcement, these new tariffs that escalate what was already a costly trade war. It is hard to put the numbers, which I told you is how we're leading tonight, so you can just remember some of the basic math, but it's hard to actually put them in perspective. I could tell you that that is a sudden, seismic 4.8% drop in all of those stocks, the 500 stocks traded on S&P, or I could estimate the value. It's a rough number, but it is a big one. That drop constitutes, in response to Trump's plan, which he was warned against, over $2 trillion lost here. Similar story on the Dow, down about 4%. The other broad stock exchange, the NASDAQ, even worse, plummeting 6%. More companies, they're actually hit the worst. In other words, I mentioned that 4% was trillions. The 2000 index of the companies that include smaller companies located in other parts of the country, et cetera, they're actually taking it the worst. And there's a lot of Trump voters and, frankly, a lot of people in general affected. But that's down 21% from its market high. These tariffs from Trump are escalating the trade war to new heights. They're guaranteeing more countermeasures in the trade war as they hit every country, big or small, rich or poor. Take one conservative magazine that tracks this very closely, The Economist. They call it now Ruination Day, showing President Trump quite literally sawing the U.S. off the map. A self-inflicted wound, isolating us from the rest of the global economy. It's a contrast from a few months back under Biden, when The Economist, which is a right-leaning kind of pro-corporate but internationally objective magazine, that's what they say they are, commented that at that point we had the economy that was the envy of the world. More headlines today. Trump tariffs sinking markets, economic havoc, Wall Street reeling, stocks plunging. That is the brutal reality. This story is well beyond politics and news nerds, if you will.
With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again. This will be indeed the golden age of America.
Big market sell-off this hour. It is ugly out there. The S&P 500 down 3.7%.
If they complain, if you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America.
Burning down the house to cook a steak. That's the line.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. In many cases, the friend is worse than the foe.
We've seen the anger in the responses from many of those allies, just the shock, the worst case scenarios that were being contemplated.
In this race, and I don't know, where's our stock now? I mean, really? Oh, okay. I just looked at the screen. I hadn't looked at it. It got hit when I think the tariffs came out.
Yes, it did, because the numbers don't lie. And you have the announcement and then trillions lost. There are economists at Yale who say the tariffs could cost you, a typical American household, close to $4,000 per year. So if this continues, that's $8,000, $12,000 counted up. And depending on your spending habits, or if you ever want to buy a car, it would be more than that. That's just an average. Everybody knows what's happening here. I just showed you. Trump caused the crash, the pain, and some are acknowledging on the right that pain will hit Americans.
No pain, no gain. That's what we used to tell our football players. There's going to be some pain with tariffs.
And there could be some pain along the way. Yeah. But you will be thankful once you go through the tough stuff.
There's absolutely going to be short-term pain. The president's been clear about that. Everyone has.
I'm behind the president 100%. There'll be disruption and pain on the front end.
Tariffs have also led to political decimation. When Hott and Smolley put on their tariff in the early 1930s, we lost the House and the Senate for 60 years. So they're not only bad economically, they're bad politically.
Here it is in full. The Trump tariff tax is the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. Trump has slapped tariffs on an island where the only inhabitants are actually soldiers at a joint U.S.-British military base. There are tariffs that hit islands that are uninhabited, unless you count the penguins. As the markets were plunging this afternoon in what is clearly a crisis, the worst crash Since when COVID arrived, Trump said, I'm good. I'm out. Goodbye. Little wave, little walk. He left work and the White House during this time of economic crisis when you'd want leadership, no matter what caused the crash, to get on the chopper, to go to Florida. He's taken a long weekend to watch a golf tournament and, by extension, promote one of his properties. This is not a drill. This is what's really happening. The election is over. This is the time for governing. And the report card from Wall Street on Donald Trump's governing today is whatever comes below an F.
And I thought they were going to do something. And what did they do? They cratered the damn stock market and gave us nothing.
There's a rigged trial. They rigged an election. The system is rigged. Mexico's going to pay for the wall. That created maybe the best economy. The virus, that goes away in April with the heat.